Hello and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight we are facing a stark reality. When we look at the figures of January 2025, of course, we see that there is 42% surge in militant attacks. And when we look at the past year in 2024, of course, there were 2,500 lives were lost, and this was declared one of the deadliest years of the decade. Much of this bloodshed is, of course, handiwork of TTP or Fitnatul Khawarij. And when we look at the lives lost, many of the economic challenges are also faced by the country due to these terrorist elements. In today's program, we will be talking about all these factors when we talk about cross-border terrorism. And of course, furthermore, the abandoned American weapons in Afghanistan are also playing a role in fueling these terrorist activities. What needs to be done by Pakistan, and what is the role of regional and international community? We will be discussing all these dimensions in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by security analyst, Major General retired Zahid Mehmood. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by security analyst, Brigadier retired Waqar Khan. Welcome to the program. And we're also joined by Pak Afghan Affairs expert, Mr. Zaher Sherazi. Welcome to the program. Major General Zahid, let me start with you. When we look at these figures of 42% increase in and the surge in militant attacks only in January 2025, what does it tell us about the apparatus of security in Pakistan?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maryam, thank you very much for the invite. Yes, it's really disturbing. There's a surge in the incidents in Pakistan, but probably now the Taliban leadership who are housing these Fitna al-Khawarij, TTP in Afghanistan, probably they decided to push all the foot soldiers into Pakistan. So there were kind of a lot of pressure on them also. But you know, as this terrorism has got affiliated with a lot of economics which is coming in, this economic effects are coming from the sponsor of these proxies, that is India. So a lot of finances there. Then we see that these proxies like TTP, BLA, BLF, Majid Brigade, so they've become kind of a franchises now. So there are a lot of economics involved, which is the biggest advantage of this economy is taken by their leadership who are sitting abroad. Then there is a mid-tier leadership who are in Afghanistan, and the foot soldiers, they have pushed them to Pakistan, and they're showcasing themselves as, you know, available elements who are there to destabilize Pakistan, who are there to destabilize and affect the Pakistan-China collaboration in the economic field. Then they are emanating threat to Russia, to Central Asia. So once we see the whole thing, there is a complete red syndicate. But unfortunately, Maryam, we need to understand that there are elements within Pakistan also who are abetting them, who are supporting them, who are taking full advantage of the present scenario. And then
right,
there's
we will be coming and delving right into those elements as well, of course. But let me, of course, bring in Brigadier retired Waqar Khan into the discussion. Brigadier Sahab, when we look at the statements by General Syed Asim Munir, he recently reiterated Pakistan's commitment to eliminating terrorist proxies. How do you assess the effectiveness of the strategies that Pakistan's security forces have been employing so far?
I think before going into nuts and bolts of the strategy, we missed the calm, and this has been continuation of policy for the last 2 years or so. I'll just briefly cover for a minute what is happening inside Afghanistan, because I now also see a lot of frustration in the Taliban cadres. There is a serious now resentment and reports of infighting, very serious. Like Sirajin Haqqani went to UAE for 3 days and he stayed there because his uncle was. So he actually was one of the, that's a major portion of the Taliban regime. And he not come back because his uncle was also sent. Then Abbas Sanakzai is also, I think, started Afghanistan. And there are some audios because he's now defying Mullah Hibatullah, the so-called Amir of the Taliban. And then also we found that in Turkey there was a meeting of the dissident elements who are fighting against Taliban, which includes, the resistance, the new resistance, Afghan resistance front, which have key members, and maybe Gulbuddin Hekmatyar also. So I think there are a lot of reports coming that probably we'll see much action inside Afghanistan, and the I would say Kandahar, part of the regime is under a lot of pressure. So this could be one of the reasons, because one could foresee, one, they are not been able to govern it properly. 75% of Afghans are facing malnutrition and food shortages. So this is the latest, which has just come into the news today. And now I come to the strategy. I think as much the calm had the four or five major prongs. One, of course, military prong is for intelligence-based operation within Pakistan in KP and Balochistan to fight the sub-nationalists in Balochistan and Swaraj in KP. But there's also collaboration between these two. Secure the borders, and then, of course, we've even gone, I think, trans-frontier twice this year, last year. And then there's a diplomatic prong, which I think the entire region is now with Pakistan, like Iran, China, Russia, and Central Asian republics in Pakistan is quite worried. And overall, I think Pakistan has been able to communicate. If you look at Trump's policy, I think it's a result of also Pakistan's exposure of Taliban, the way they have behaved. We had hope that it would work after withdrawal of US, but somehow I think a lot of money was left with them. There are reports like 17 to 20 billion dollars given by Biden administration last 3.5 years. And so Azmi Istikam, I think, is successful because this is a frustrated fight from the other side. So definitely they try to up the ante because India is now trying to actually try to exploit maximum by, as I think mentioned by Jan Saab, by funding, and also I'm sure they have some operators inside Afghanistan now and directing. So all told, I think this is I would say the fight is in the last stage. 2025 will be decisive, and I can predict that by mid of 2025 you may find Taliban leadership in this area, which will be, I think, very good news for Pakistan and the region. And I think because of this pressure, also frustration, they'll also pick, I think, step up the attacks because when you are in the last phases of the war or the battle, then both sides try to exert. Hopefully, inshallah, our law enforcement agency, Frontier Corps, Pakistan Army Intelligence would succeed. The only, I think, more effort required is the provincial setups of both KP and Balochistan, especially in KP, because they were dealing. Still, we find, the PTI leadership not very clear about the objectives of this war. So they have to come on board. I think Prime Minister just visited Quetta, and this is also assurance that before that Army Chief was there, and it was leading from the front. And I think whatever he has said is the sentiment of the people of Pakistan and the armed forces.
And Mr. Sherazi, when we look at the nexus between Afghan Taliban and Fitat al-Khawarij or TTP, in today's news, how do you respond to the killing of son of Afghanistan's deputy governor of course, Badani's province? That was one of the terrorists that was killed. So how do you think that reiterates Pakistan's position, and what needs to be done by Pakistan on diplomatic front or by engaging with the regional partners?
Well, thank you, Maryam. I think it is proof how the Taliban supporting the Fitna al-Khawarij, because in this operation in Dera Ismail Khan district, the security forces claim to have killed the son of Moli Ghulam Ahmad, and he is the deputy governor of Badghaiz province. And perhaps the Pakistani authorities have also asked to hand over the body of the deceased militant, but they are refusing it. I think this is not for the first time, because for a number of reasons we have seen the Afghan Taliban had failed either to take action against the TTP, the ISK. Maybe they are fighting ISK, but they're very cordial towards other militant groups, more than 14, 15 of them, who are operating against Pakistan. Maybe one reason is that they are unable to rein in those militants. The second can be, again, because they are hand in glove with each other, and perhaps they are in symbiotic relationship and protecting each other's interest and benefits. Another important aspect, the weapons, with more than $77 billion US-led coalition's weapons, which are lying in Afghanistan, it is again another source of destabilization in this region. There are reports coming that perhaps there are, especially after the Trump administration's announcement that they would be stopping the financial assistance to Afghanistan until and unless they return the U.S. weapons. I think this has sent a kind of a shock waves in among the Taliban administration, and there are reports perhaps now they are looking towards some potential buyers, even if it can be Indian, it can be Chinese. So I think, and the militant groups, they are also being pumped in with a lot of money by Indian proxies, by other elements who wanted to counter China's influence in this region. So I think the leftover weapons, they are again becoming a serious threat not only to Pakistan, as Pakistan's Foreign Office has also mentioned and very clearly communicated that these weapons are threatening Pakistan. But actually these weapons are also a serious threat to the Chinese interests. They are a serious threat to the Central Asian countries because their form of militants are also in the no-go areas of Afghanistan, and maybe Iran is also facing a threat. And recently you have seen the Iranian military chief when he was here in Pakistan. Perhaps there are reports that some exchange of those hardline militant elements had taken place between Pakistan and Iran. So it means Pakistan and Iran are also collaborating. Now coming again, as Brigadier Sahib was mentioning, the inability of the KP government to
When we look at the recent reports and the killing of the Deputy Governor's son, of course, a lot of these weapons were recovered, like M16A4 and M24 sniper rifles were also recovered. So what does it means for the future of Afghanistan when these weapons are available to these terrorist elements, and like you earlier alluded to, that they are not willing to, of course, come to get his dead body. So how do you think that that US government with Trump in office is going to be dealing with this situation in Afghanistan now?
Well, you know, the Trump administration here, they are stopping the money. They are least interested. Perhaps they don't feel the Taliban government is an inclusive government. They are also, conveying a message that if there are no human rights, there are no women rights, they are likely to even ban the assistance which the U.S. is giving, because the Biden administration was responsible, the retreat of the U.S. troops, and it was a very, quick retreat. We can say again the third time the U.S.-led coalition had ditched Afghanistan as well as the Pakistan. And perhaps the law and order situation, maybe the Biden administration intentionally tried to create a kind of a proxy battle zone again because of a number of reasons. First, they have also put in, because there are reports that the ISK had been installed here once to counter the Chinese influence, also keep an eye on Afghanistan, and maybe try to fan sectarian violence in Pakistan. So multiple purposes against this region is left unattended in the form of a proxy battle zone, where all those elements who wanted to destabilize Pakistan, they can get weapons, they have mercenaries, they can buy the fighters, they can put them and target those Pakistani interests inside, maybe the Chinese interests, the CPAC, the BRI. So I think there are a number of reasons, but importantly, I think the Taliban administration, perhaps they must be conveyed now very clearly that if they are not willing to cooperate with the international community, they are not stopping their soil to be used against Pakistan and other regional countries, perhaps they are out of the business now.
Right, right. And when we talk about all these factors, General Mehmood, we know that Badruddin was also given training by TTP. So how do you think that Pakistani authorities should be engaging with the Afghan Taliban at this point in time, keeping in mind the context?
Maryam, most important thing is, that the realization by the interim government in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the Afghanis masses are also victim of this interim government. They have got themselves linked to the terrorism, they have got themselves linked to the international money or international funding which is coming there. And now we are all talking about the $7 billion weapons which are available. So this is kind of an there seems more of a business for them rather than running a government. They are not the statesmen, or the statecraft is very low. The Taliban government has to understand that they are responsible for a sovereign country which is Afghanistan, and if they want to be a responsible state in the Committee of Nations, they have to act like statesmen, and then they have to be there for the people of Afghanistan first, and then for the people of Pakistan and the region. So they have to realize that they are the government and they have the responsibility. Unfortunately, they have fears while taking action against the TTP, these fitna al-Khawarij. What are the fears? Fears are that they might find divisions amongst themselves. They know that these TTP, they have been fighting with them, and if they will take action against them, they might turn against them. There are already, once such type of people are fighting this war, there is always a struggle for power within the groups also. I have news about, I've heard a news that in even the BLA, one of the very important BLA commander, Mushfaq, probably Kohi his name, he has been killed by his own colleague or by someone within the groups, So this is they're trying to they're struggling to get close to the Indian authorities, Indian engineers who are working there, for the money. So there is a lot of struggle, and I have the news that probably the Indians are also trying to create some kind of collaboration amongst themselves, so they have a united, they give a united response to Pakistan. So what I want to bring out is that these are not ordinary or responsible people sitting there. So Pakistan government has to engage them, but before that, the kinetic environment, the military operations must create an environment where they should understand that now is the time to negotiate, and then we have to find some solution, most importantly for the people of Afghanistan, and then for the people of Pakistan, and then for the region and the entire international community. As Sherazi Sahab was saying that this threat is now, this will increase the threat towards the international, I mean a lot of international transnational application we are going to see very soon, because these are the people who were born in the war, who have been throughout their life, they have been in the war, and probably they are looking at the war for their future also, and this is kind of economic. Then that's illegal spectrum because of the sealing of the borders, so they are also disturbed and perturbed, and probably there are elements within the interim government who are also disturbed because of the sealing of borders and stopping of this illegal spectrum which is attached, and probably this is the reason that they are increasing pressure on the military, Pakistani military, so they get the buffer zones or the open areas from where that old smuggling and that kind of trade is again available to them. So Pakistan need to engage them politically, Pakistan need to engage them diplomatically, and Pakistan has to create coalitions within the region and then talk to Americans that they have already indicated.
But General Sahab, we don't see any kind of willingness from Afghan Taliban part. Mr. Sherazi, what's your take on this? What is the reason? Do you think that they are ideologically aligned with TTP, and also we are witnessing for quite some time now, and there are reports that around 20 small groups have now merged into TTP, and they are also now attacking security personnel, which was the approach of TTA. So do you think they are also now trying to create a better public image for themselves?
Well, I think, they are the enemies of Pakistan, and in any form, if they are fighting the state, perhaps they are not welcome. And if the Afghan Taliban are supporting our enemies, it means they are also hostile towards it and they have their own interest. First, again, we would, recall that why the Afghan Taliban are not taking action. First of all, I think perhaps there are a number of areas where the Afghan Taliban don't have the writ. The ISK is running a parallel system there, the TTP, the BLA, BNA, and a number of other, even the Turkestan Islamic Party, the Uyghur militants, as well as the Central Asian militants, they are operating in some areas where the Kabul government don't have a writ. This is one thing. The second thing is also there is a lot of internal differences among the Hebatullah and Haqqanis and other groups. Perhaps some of them have a soft corner for these militants, the TTP and other Fitna al-Khawarij, accepting them as their half-brothers and their Mujahideen friends, perhaps out of the code of Pushtun Wali, maybe because of the tribalism they are towing still. But on the other hand, there are groups who want these non-state actors to be flushed out of Afghanistan or maybe relocated to other areas. But importantly, again, both the people are suffering. Earlier, Brigadier Waqar was mentioning perhaps the PTI government in KP, it is unable to take care of the things. They are unable to devise a policy to man that a long border with Afghanistan. And actually, today we had a meeting with the Chief Minister, and another proposal had come. And perhaps now the KP government is also collaborating with the center. They are sending a kind of a TOR to the central government for negotiation with Afghanistan through Foreign Office. And actually, the first step would be they are engaging the tribal clans who are living on both sides of the border along Pak-Afghan borders. I think this is a very important step because they would be engaging these tribes to tribal jirgas. They would be getting responsible people from both sides of the border. They would be again, collaborating with them to stop the cross-border infiltration, the facilitation of these cross-border militants' movement among the tribes, and those tribes will then be responsible for the security of and the shuttling of these militants. So I think that would be a wonderful experiment if they want to do. On the other hand, perhaps engagement at the Foreign Office level, and also the people who are not part of the Taliban government, all those stakeholders, they're from the Northern Alliance, they're from different other regions, other ethnic groups who are not being part of the Afghan Taliban, who are ruling the Kabul. Perhaps they can be a good source of neutralizing the Afghan Taliban influence over the TTP and their support. Another important thing, we have Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who had been a part of a good support from Pakistan. He can be utilized. Then we have the religious elements in Pakistan in the form of Haqqaniya Madrasa. I think they had a great influence on the Afghan Taliban. So these are different aspects of negotiating and convincing the Kabul government to stop supporting these TTP elements who had been declared as enemies of Pakistan. They don't accept Pakistan's writ. So obviously, supporting Pakistan's enemy in any case means they are having an enmity toward Pakistan, and Pakistan had to respond, and it is responding in the same coin to Kabul or anyone else who wanted to destabilize this region.
Right, right. And Brigadier Waqar, when we talk about all these elements, what's your take on this first? And second, like we earlier discussed, that TTP is now also employing the same centralized commands structured system. How do you think Pakistani forces should be responding, or what kind of counter terrorism strategy we should be opting for?
Yeah, I think I'll just point out to two entities where you find, open hypocrisy. One, of course, the Americans, they left $7 billion worth of arsenal. And then, the authenticated reports from international, you can say, opinion makers or neutral experts who are insiders, like Sarah Adams from CIA, Ahmad Masood, and even I think a lot of Afghans who are in exile, that 87 or 86 million dollars every week was being, shipped in cash from, let's say, U.S. establishment, whoever was doing it. And on the other side, there was sanctions. There was a huge hypocrisy. I think there was a tacit understanding in Doha agreement, which probably the regional countries didn't know that Taliban will be funded. That's how you find the Afghan currency also. Otherwise, there's no industry in Afghanistan. But maybe this aid has been coming and then was misused by Taliban. So there was an oversight, no oversight by Cigar or anybody else because you don't know how it was distributed. One is that. So I would say it was Western hypocrisy. Now only when the ISIS started targeting inside US that probably the West is now realizing they had attacked in Russia, and then on 1st January, both attacks were by the ISIS. Now we come to hypocrisy of the Taliban. I think this is the time now to call it very openly. Despite and they people, I think it was mentioned regarding Pashtun Wali. Yes, there are traditions, but Pashtun Wali also says that in case you are given, let's say, refuge in a friend's house, then you don't attack that house also. It doesn't apply to Afghanistan soil also. So, and there are definitely a lot of their families were here in Pakistan last 40 years in Iran. So how do you attack and how do you justify? I think it's based on hypocrisy. Probably they thought they could use the terrorism as a tool of policy, draw concession as was mentioned by Jan Saab, support the or let's say create space for this illegal spectrum, and then probably they thought they could cow down Pakistan because so-called they pushed two superpowers out, not realizing that both superpowers only were thrown out because of support of Pakistan, because that was in our interest. And this, I think, I would say, stereotyping of Afghan being able to, destroy two superpowers. I don't think so. It's based on, any facts. Basically, it was Pakistan support. Now we come to the, I think, TTP. I am of the opinion that this is the last year of this battle. Inside, there are a lot of fractures. If you look at reports coming from social media accounts of the northern resistance, they are claiming they are attacking 200 places every month. So this is huge number. They've been able to attack, inside Kabul's ministries, and there is definitely a huge, I think, support for northern resistance because Taliban has shut down, almost 20 million women, including their smaller children. There are also widows, how do they work? They have been shut out of entire public life. And there is also an overall resistance by the Afghan people because in the last 20 years they had seen some form of democracy, women working, with the men, of course, within the Afghan traditions. And now, like men, they can't go to a barber shop and music, and in this, I think, third decade of 21st century, these are absurd interpretation, I would say, of whatever system they are doing. So all told, there's, I think, I would say it's a powder keg which is ready to explode. But definitely, pressure is coming on Pakistan because India also found the space. But I think strategy is working, and I feel that there will be hardened, battles in days to come. But ultimately, they will be defeated, and hopefully, I think 2025 will be end of this regime, and maybe there is some form of government which is suitable for all the regional countries. Pakistan has also been able to rally entire region. Look at Moscow format on 4th October in Moscow. Muttaqi Shah was there and he was told to shut down these terrorist factories, and it was unanimous, voice from Iran, Pakistan, Russian Federation, China, and Central Asian republics. Even India was there. So I think time is now coming that we should be hopeful that we'll be able to defeat this scourge of terror.
Right, but General Zahid, at the same time, with all this picture in mind, don't you think that the influx of this heavy weaponry, American weapons within Afghanistan, reflect a failure of international arms control, and what should be the role of international community at this point in time?
Of course, it is the responsibility. Prime responsibility still, I would say, is of United States of America, who withdrew from Afghanistan.
Very
it was
hastily.
Yes, very hastily, and it was not a comprehensive withdrawal. It was a withdrawal, incomplete withdrawal, I would say, and that's why they will remain under doubt, because people of this region who are suffering, who are losing lives every day. We have suffered. I mean, Pakistan has lost more than 90,000 lives. So you can imagine every day we are losing soldiers, we are losing security personnel. Look at the families. I mean, we should feel about those families, and those families must be doubting United States of America, whose weapon was used against their loved ones, to kill them. So they will always feel that this is a kind of a controlled chaos, or maybe they are also collaborating. So the biggest moral responsibility is of United States of America, and that's why I was saying that Pakistan must talk to United States of America, and they must carve out a strategy. But Maryam, most important thing is we are talking about these weapons, we are talking about what all is left, but there is a complete thought process. So this is, there are serious minds behind the application which is against Pakistan. They are trying not only to put a lot of emphasis, and there is a surge in the military operations, but again the social disruptive movements, especially in Balochistan. So they are trying to mix that also with this. So these such movements, they start off on maybe on the human rights violation or something about their deprivations, but then these have been hijacked Now somebody else is controlling. So the same mind is controlling these militants, same mind is controlling these social disruptive movements. So there is a complete thought process. So this, we need to have a
Right.
complete strategy to defeat this. You know, we must define an end state. That's why I always ask that Pakistan must ask United States of America that what is the end state of Afghanistan, and same way I ask them that we must ask United States of America what is the end state they are looking at for the Middle East. So once the end state is defined, then we can start, you know, collaborating and taking actions to reach to that end state.
But don't you think, General Saab, that with Trump 2.0 in office, he would be looking inwards now, and of course India-Pacific policy would be at forefront. But coming back to the question of BLA, of course, the recent attacks, we know that Balochistan Liberation Army has openly claimed responsibility for this. So in your opinion, what needs to be done by our state apparatus in terms of intelligence and in terms of capacity building of our security personnel?
I think the most important thing, as Brigadier Waqar in his initial remarks, he was talking about the responsibility of the provincial government. So the political onus of this war, that has to be taken by the political leaders of Pakistan, the federal government as well as the provincial governments. You know, the wars are always led by the leaders, political leaders, and the military is one of the instrument with them, you know, to fulfill those political and military objectives. Now, Pakistan need to have a whole of a nation approach. Already Sherazi Sahab has spoken about the elders, the jirgas, the people who are effective in Pakistan and the people who are effective in Afghanistan, and there are such minds and such souls present in this region who are looking towards a better Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship, who are looking towards the prosperity of this region. So we need to have those people around us, we need to contact them, and the whole of a nation approach, once I speak, then the clearing, holding and the build part of the strategy which has been implied. Unfortunately, clear and hold is always, you know, achieved, but once it's come to the build part, especially in terms of the socio-economic, you know, deprivations and socio-economic development, there we lack, to be very honest, and that's criminal, to be very honest, because that provides the breeding ground. Today, because of this poverty, there's no, I mean,
these
we
terrorist
have
elements are of course exploiting
those
that gaps.
It's easy to recruit, you know, once you're hungry, then even you don't have a religion to think about, what to talk of, you know, a state. So state has to reach to each and every individual who is living in these areas. We have to look after them. We have to, you know, there's a lot of difference between the conditions. If you're sitting in F6 or F7 in Islamabad and somebody is sitting in that part of the Pakistan, of course there are deprivations. We need to address that. And then there are people inside Pakistan. We must bring them under lawfare. No more, you know, ignoring such elements, even if they're part of the social disruptive movements. You know what I'm hinting at. So we have to bring these people under the law, serious implementation of the law, then we are going to achieve something. Otherwise, again, we'll be, you know, suffering the way we are suffering now.
Of course, that remains very important. But Brigadier Waqar, coming back to the question of surveillance, intelligence and the latest technologies that are available today, how do you think that Pakistani security forces can inculcate those elements, especially when we talk about AI in the areas like North Waziristan, KP and Balochistan, which are very vulnerable and which are resource of course rich as well. So what needs to be done regarding that?
I think technology has been used by the military and the Air Force. Pakistan has also used drone warfare for precise targeting. That's why there have been, I think, very less collateral damage, even when there were strikes inside Afghanistan. But the issue is basically of the porous borders. You know, there are 300,000 Afghans cross every month because of various reasons. There will be women who come for, let's say, Quetta or Peshawar for, let's say, their treatment. There are kids coming for education, businesses, transport, and definitely there is a flow of commerce which we cannot stop because it's a matter of 40 million Afghan And Afghans can't be abandoned just because of, let's say, one regime. And Pakistan has to actually, somehow I feel that they can't be a long-term policy because I always say that if you look at last 30 years, there were, I think, 13 or 14 times the regime change. Every time it was violent, right from Sardar Dawood, Tarakai, Fizullah Amin, if you count them, they were all assassinated. Dr. Babrak Karmal, then Dr. Najibullah, Taliban 1, Taliban. So they've been, violent regimes. So it means it's a destabilization through superpowers intervention. Unfortunately, again, we didn't invite them. So all told, we have to deal with people who are sitting in Kabul. And I think in terms of, as you mentioned, technology, surveillance system, whatever Pakistan has, and we have friends also who can provide. But still, the issue of forest border. Then you have some figures. If you go to KP, they say that there are almost 5 million still Afghan refugees, or maybe half of them are illegal. And even in repatriation, there was a lot of noise. Like Iran has repatriated, I think, 1.5 million Afghans, and there was nobody even talked about it. But here somehow this becomes a political issue because of some of political parties. Then there was, I think, I would say, change in policy by the PTI government when they started accommodating them, and that's where I think the surge came. Maybe they had given some assurances, but it cannot work. So I would say that this policy must continue. We are, inshallah, on the winning side, and hopefully, especially looking at what is happening inside Afghanistan, because nobody discusses that there are serious fractures now in the leadership, and I can, kind of project that maybe by end of the year you will have a very weak regime, and maybe people getting, in revolt against this oppressive regime, and maybe there's factionalism. So let's see how it materializes. Pakistan has to actually defend both sides, inside and outside Pakistan.
Right, right. And Sherazi Sahab, in your opinion, what kind of diplomatic pressure Pakistan needs to put on Afghan Taliban now in terms of getting them to international forums, and what outcomes should we expect?
Well, actually, as Brigadier Waqar and earlier General Zahid was saying, perhaps I would just continue with that. We should be very much clear in our policy. A national inclusive policy which should have all the political parties and all the political stakeholders on board. We must have engagement with our friendly countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, even Iran, UAE, because they had been part of that agreement which imposed this non-inclusive government in Kabul. I think now the message is very clear. The wind, the tide is against the Taliban regime now. All those elements, the stakeholders who are not part of this non-inclusive Taliban government, perhaps they've started showing their concern. The Trump administration's policy is very clear. Perhaps they are not going to support the Taliban regime in one way or the other, and that is very clear. Even if it's in the form of stopping their aid or in the form of getting back their weaponry from Afghanistan, perhaps there would be a conflict. Again, Pakistan is a very key stakeholder, and the messages are very clear. I think a recent visit by Ambassador Sadiq and a delegation, it had very clearly conveyed to the Afghan government that they have to stop the TTP and other militant groups which are operating against Pakistan. It is very clear. The second thing, I think the international community should now realize, because this destabilized Afghanistan is a serious threat not only to Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan is facing the brunt of all the illogical policies of the US-led coalition and the international community. But obviously now Iran is also worried. The Central Asian states are also worried. China is also worried because they have spent billions of dollars in the BRI and CPAC project, and they're not going to put it to the drain. So obviously, these stakeholders are showing their concern. The international community, especially the regional countries, I think Pakistan, Iran, even the Central Asian republics, they must have a very clear message to the Afghan authorities that if they want to live like a responsible state and they wanted to do business, because there is a huge potential of business between the western border of Pakistan and the Central Asian republics and even to Russia. And Russians even come to even the hot waters if they want. But actually it can happen only when Afghanistan is stabilized, there is a peace, and this Afghan soil is not in the hands of those militant elements, those terrorist elements, which are a serious threat not only to Pakistan, but also to all the entire region. So this have to be like a realistic approach, and all those hostile forces which are using again Afghanistan, Pak-Afghan region as a proxy battle zone, not only as a war zone but also as a economic proxy battle zone to target their opponents. Perhaps we have to be very realistic. We have to, devise a strategy to counter those, whatever these hostile agencies and hostile countries are planning against Pakistan. And I think India is in the forefront in all this. Perhaps a message should also be conveyed to all those elements who are supporting Indians, whether it's the US or the Israeli lobby or maybe the Zionist lobby, to destabilize Pakistan. I think it can be the only way to counter all these intrudes and conspiracies against Pakistani state.
Right, right. And General Zahid, when we talk about international condemnation for Afghan government, how do you see this is going to be aligning with Pakistan's diplomatic efforts? Because we know that Pakistan has its own internal as well as cross-border terrorism issues.
The international community, they understand what are the challenges for us. They understand what Taliban's are doing. Probably at the moment, this region is not in the true focus, because since the Trump has taken over, every country is struggling for themselves. There are economic issues. Europe is under stress. Then the major issues are in Middle East. Then Africa is also under a lot of trouble. So probably this is kind of an ignored area, ignored region. But this is not ignored by by anything else, but probably deliberately this is being ignored because of the Indian role in the Indo-Pacific strategy. They want a watchdog. To me, I think this region which is bordering China, region which is bordering Russia, these are the main two competitors for the Washington, but probably they're little relaxed about this, and they're not worried about what is happening in Afghanistan. But Pakistan has sacrificed the most. Pakistan has suffered the most. This the international community has to understand. But today, in today's world, Maryam, we should be very clear that nobody at their own sympathizes with you till the time you just you reach to them and you create, you have to tell them that what is the threat for you. As earlier Sherazi was also hinting at, there are more than 25, 26 proscribed organizations in Afghanistan. So about 15, 16 are functioning against Pakistan, and their application is against Pakistan. But there are organizations who are which are threatening China, Russia, and then if the ISIS, ISIL, they establish themselves here, so they'll be threatening United States interest anywhere in the world. They'll be threatening the Western interest. So one day they will again they'll be at ground zero, kind of a stuff. So they need to understand. We need to make United States realize that what is the threat which is over here. And there is a hope once this Trump is, he has announced about stopping of this aid. But as a Pakistani anti-war Trump, it's okay. But I would love to have, and I would like to have a pro-peace and pro-stability Trump. Then probably this region can have a better impact on them. But as a Pakistani, I would again say that we should have a clear strategy of our own.
Of course.
And that is through the consensus. We should have a very, very clear, everyone, every segment of the society, every element
Whole
of the national
approach.
yes, whole of a nation approach.
Of course.
Till the time we don't address our own issues, we should not expect that somebody from outside will come and he will help us in this regard.
Right, and on that positive note, thank you very much, Major General Retired Zahid Mehmood, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Waqar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Zahir Shah Sherazi, for joining us in today's program. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Thanks for joining.